Hello and welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore, and I am really happy. I've got a pair of headphones on at the moment because I'm feeling really comfortable. Got my cup of tea. I see there's another man on the screen here. Look at this. He's got a hot drink. Always has a hot drink, but this doesn't look like the normal cinnamon apple tea that I used to find him with. What is this that you've got, Dr. Heath?
This is actually cinnamon apple nut bread.
Oh, so there is a bit of you're a cinnamon addict, aren't you? You just can't stop yourself.
I can't help it. I'm a cinnamon addict. I'm a cinnamaholic.
A cinemaholic. Wow, in probably in more ways than one, I think. Right, so I'm here today with someone who I was. It was such a pleasure. We over the 2024, we met on a fair few occasions. So first of all, I met you through X Spaces. I was indulging in X Spaces. I hadn't done them before, and then over a matter of a week and a half, I was doing loads of big X spaces and talking to loads of people. And one of the most brilliant experiences during that time was meeting you and being so like, oh wow, what a wonderful human being. I meet loads and loads of people all the time, and it's really notable when you meet someone who makes you perks you up, makes you go, wow, that's a special person. And I kept you in my mind. And then later on, there was multiple people who mentioned you when I was starting doing TNT radio, and so I was honored to have you, Dr. Robert Heath Meeks, Dr. Heath himself, come and be on my show. That was wonderful. Every Friday we'd have our end of the week sort of reset. We talk about something that, to be perfectly honest, I was very cheeky through that period, and you helped me with lots of my own issues. I used you, sir. I used you for my own benefit. I hope you forgive me. But listen, for the people who don't know you, Dr. Heath, explain a little bit about yourself, just on a base level, what you do and etc.
Well, I like to say that I'm a pool boy because I have a pool. It's a bit of a full-time job, and then I do psychology on the side. And but the pool boy doesn't pay very well. It's actually a labor of love, but I do psychology for pay. And I just got off the phone with a lovely law firm, and letting me know that they're going to make life difficult for me if I don't give them what they want. But that's what law firms are paid to do. But part of what I do is forensic psychology, so that's a bit of a confrontational, adversarial field where people just want what they want. And then on the other side of my business is assessment. I do a lot of assessment for return to duty. I do a lot of marriage and family and relationship counseling. I do a lot of the just, bread and butter things like people struggling with anxiety, depression, trauma. My training, by the way, is on the PTSD care unit of the Veterans Administration Medical Center, the VAMC. And one of my favorite things to have done of all time is working with veterans, working with people who have served and, given so much of themselves, for their country. And then they often, sadly, don't know how to come back. It's almost like they leave part of themselves on the battlefield, and they need somebody that can help them regain at least a semblance of a normal life. So I do a lot of that. And crisis intervention, I used to do a lot of that, but I don't anymore. I'm not quite the crisis addict that I used to be, getting up at 2 a.m. and rushing to save the day somewhere. I'll leave that to younger, more energetic people these days and stay in bed until bright and early 4:30 a.m., which is when I usually get up. And and then also I'm a barista, and I'm not even making that up. I thought I would develop a side gig once upon a time. And so I went to Flint, Michigan, and spent 2 weeks training to do espressos and lattes and cappuccinos and macchiatos and actually opened a coffee shop with a friend of mine at the local gym. Coffee is serious business. And it was
Mm-hmm.
so serious, it got to eating up too much of my time. So sadly, I had to back out of that. And so now I only make coffee for myself, my family, and radio hosts that may drop by.
Oh, I'd love to drop by one day. I'd love to sit down and have a coffee with you sometime. I have to say that there's a few things here. Number one, your t-shirt is that of a pool boy, so I agree. It looks like you're probably gonna save someone's life anytime now and jump in the pool and stop them from drowning. We know, how dangerous pools could be. But the working with veterans, that's where you meet very humble people, I would assume, very people who have been humbled to an extent by their experience. And I can imagine that's one hell of an occupation, vocation of really interesting thing. And coffee shops, wow. There's a coffee shop by me which closed down and is reopening. It wasn't even a coffee shop. It was a craft beer shop which had a guy called Phil who set up a coffee stall in there for the mornings, so that it wasn't just open in the afternoons and evenings and the space wasn't being used. And it became a fantastic place for the community. It's very much missed, and he's reopening in a new place. And I find it's such a community activity as well, coffee. What did you do? Did you just open up a store like that, like a little one, or did you actually go at it as a business? Because you've got so much on your plate or your cup.
Yeah, yeah. If I'd only known, I will say that training to be a barista was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. It's almost being able to participate in a bit of making magic in everybody's morning. And so you
Mhm.
see these weary people stumble in. I can't remember when we opened. I think we would open in Flint, Michigan. I think we had to be there like at 4:30 or something, and we would open by 5:30. And so people would walk in fairly lifeless, and then we would pump some caffeine into them, and then the lights would come on in their eyes, and it was just really, really fun getting to know people. But when I came to Arkansas with this, a friend of mine who owns a gym had a very small juice bar, so to speak, and so we decided we would make it a split juice bar coffee shop. And it was meant to be more of a managerial or supervisory thing, but it's so hard to find really, really dedicated people that want to get up at 4:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock to be there at 4:30 and open by 5:30 that I got lots of phone calls. So and so can't show up for work. Can you come in? And well, I have a full day of patience. I can't just come in and have fun making coffee all day as much as I would love that. It's much less stress than what I
Mhm.
do in my day-to-day life. And so, yeah, we ran that. It was actually called the Coffee Beanery. It was a franchise, and the plan was to open several of those. But, the managerial thing was a bit of a problem. And so I just decided it was time to just get back to my bread and butter, which is what I did. And I've been doing that ever since. But I do know how to make a really great latte.
Yeah, I bet you do. It scares me, the idea of being, because I've known some really, I'm going to use the term shit hot baristas, that really know their stuff and can make the best coffee around. And it really
Mm,
makes me feel like, oh, I couldn't even get to that level. It puts you in a state of mind that when these guys are magic. They're like the wizards in the kitchen who can
mm.
really do something. This is why I didn't just make a coffee at home. This is why I like to go out to a cafe. I like to have someone who really knows what they're doing go at it. And it's beautiful. But you said as well, did you say forensic psychologist or psychiatrist?
Psychology. Yeah,
Okay.
so the field of forensic psychology is really, really broad. You can do all kinds of things in it. My part in it, I've done lots of home studies. And so if a couple disagreed and the court's place is to act in the best care and interest of the child, um, my job was to thoroughly review mom, dad, home environment, if there's access to anything dangerous, if the home is not up to snuff or unkempt in a way, and not just messy, but in a way that it would be dangerous or unfitting for the child. And so it was a pretty Cadillac assessment. Those are very pricey, or they can be very pricey. Sadly, I found that where I'm located, a lot of courts really either don't know about them or they don't put a lot of stock in them. But if you're on the West Coast or the East Coast of the US, they're pretty standard fare. But in the middle of the US, they tend to skip over things like that. But it's very rewarding work because nobody is your enemy in that. Mom is not your enemy, dad is not your enemy, but you're really working, for the best interest of that child, and that's kind of the standard there. So that's one thing. The other thing would be in a personal injury case where someone may have been injured in a car accident or an employment accident or something like that. And so there's a bit of an interesting calculation there that you could assume certain things based on people's school performance. If there is IQ testing, often there's not. You can assume certain things, and then you could look at the difference in point A, what they were prior to the injury, and then part B, what they were after the injury. And the difference between the two is what the attorneys will go after as loss of functioning. So it may be a
Mhm.
loss of function. It's almost like if you lost fingers or whatever. Yeah, your viewers may find it kind of odd that every body part has a price tag on it. At least, I mean, I'm sure in the UK also, but especially, in the US, we're the
Mhm.
land of the largest law firm in the US is the firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, and there's a whole bunch of them.
Cheatham. I can't believe there's a Cheatham in there, right in the center.
And man, they go after every red cent, because that's how they get paid. So with the brain, it works similarly, so that a person may have a loss in verbal fluency. So you're a radio host. If you have an injury and it adversely affects, your verbal cortex, then you can get paid for that, a certain amount of money. And that's very interesting work. I don't do as much of it as I used to because it is very often time consuming, confrontational, and takes a lot of energy. But my main thing that I do in the forensic field is if someone flies an airplane or drives an 80,000 pound truck or a tugboat or a train or works on the pipeline, all those are covered in the U.S. under the DOT, the Department of Transportation. So people are often shocked that no, it's naughty to smoke a blunt and fly 747.
No, don't be silly. Come on. All right then. You caught me.
Yeah. And so when your pilot gets caught doing that, they have to come see me. And we have to
Mm.
see, is this an addiction? Is it something that can be halted? Are there hurdles to put in the way so that it won't happen again? And so we test those areas, such as task segmentation, verbal fluency, short-term memory, long-term memory, working memory, all those different neurological skills, and then make some determination of have they made it to a point where continuing to operate in that safety sensitive position would be dangerous for other people. And the
Mhm.
funny thing, I mean, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny to me, but I've got a warped sense of humor, is that I'll have guys and gals that'll say, well, I wasn't smoking on duty. Well, marijuana's not like drinking a beer, I mean, it has longer term effects. And I try to explain that it dims your bulb, and your bulb may remain dim for weeks or months after. And so it's not like incense in the room or whatever. It really does adversely affect mental functioning, and people get slower and slower. And I'm sorry, what was I talking about? Slower and slower and slower.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. There is true. I was watching an episode of Kill Tony yesterday where there was a guy on there who was a comedian, a very strange comedian, and he had on his left hand, he's left-handed. He was missing half of a finger from workplace incident where he got it. He closed I think it was like a UPS door on his hand or something, and then he pulled off the glove and it pulled off part of his finger
Oh my gosh.
completely, and he got paid 4 grand for that, only 4 grand,
Only
which is
four
yeah,
grand.
yeah, 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 and he was quite young, and he said, the solicitors were like, "That's all you're going to get for it." This all sides were in belief, and I remember watching something. I think it was a Michael Moore documentary of the past where they were talking about two fingers, and he had to decide between which finger he wanted to sew on because the insurance wouldn't cover the cost of both fingers. So he had to decide which finger. One finger was $35,000 and the other was something like $10,000 because one was a very, very bizarre thing there. But yeah, yeah, it's true. Body parts. They're worth money. They're worth time. So that seems you spend a bit of time, by the sounds of it, actually working with the people who, whether it be the families or whether it be these
Mm.
people, whether it be the veterans, you're working with people for their best interest. Is that kind of hard to do in an industry like this or with systems like this?
Well, yeah, because one of the great problems of our age is insight. And, you can have 20/20 vision, but many people have 20/10 insight. It's a different kind of sight. It's internal instead of external. And so many people really just don't have it. Speaking of fingers, I would think that the finger most people would choose would be the index finger because without it, you can point at other people and say, it's your problem, not mine. It's your fault, not mine, And
Mhm.
so we have so many, like the book I think I might have mentioned on one of your shows, and it was mistakes were made, but not by me. And excuse me, I have to mistakes were made, but not by me. And I think that that is everyone's favorite motto. Mistakes were made. I've had grown men. It really amazes me. Tell me, um, after it's taken them some time to get through the requirements that the assessment I've done indicate that they need to get through. And they'll say, "You're keeping me out of work." And I say, "Oh my goodness, that'd be a terrible thing of me to do. I see all this time I thought it was the drugs. I didn't think it had anything to do with
Mhm.
that." But it's a world of it's everyone else's fault, and it really does feed addiction. I think
Mhm.
that not to segue to a different point, but and I think I've talked about this that that's as long as your problem is really someone else's problem, then you're destined to never solve your problem. You're destined to stay stuck. And
Mhm.
so, to me, that's what amazes me about that is when I get someone on the camera, and so I do a lot of my assessments just like this. Rarely these days am I actually sitting in the same room with someone, and thankfully we can do this at a distance, But it amazes me what people tell me about themselves that they really don't realize that they're telling me, and that's one of them. That it's your fault. It's the this stinks. This is a scam by the government or whatever. And what they're telling me is that I have no accountability, which means that I'll probably do it again. And
Mhm.
so it's a really interesting job. I never have one case that's exactly like the other case. They're all very interesting. Many are fairly polite and courteous, and then some are very, very confrontational and disruptive and disrespectful. One of the strangest things I've had happen here recently is a former client showed up on site while I was gone and destroyed my security system with an axe, and
Ooh.
it was all on video.
Wow, for as long as he wasn't like using the axe upon the video.
That's right. The video caught it right until he destroyed it to the point that the video would not work. But
Oh, wow.
my wife called me and she said, "Are you aware of what's going on at the house?" And I said, "Well, no, I've been in town. What's going on?" And then she said, "Well, you can just see when you get here," which, what a
She seems
cliffhanger.
pretty relaxed, yeah. There's a many
And
wives that would be screaming hysterically into the
she
phone.
was pretty freaked out because she pulled up on the property like, I don't know, 15 minutes after this guy left. And so when I pulled up, I saw right away that my gate system um, was destroyed because that's where the keypad is and the camera.
Mhm.
And then camera two was filming this individual destroying my gate station. But the weird thing, and I really just figured this out after really putting some pieces together. I guess I was slow on the uptake, but it caught the individual standing somewhere just wailing away like John Bunyan with a huge axe at something. And I thought,
Yeah.
there's nothing there to axe. And I got to looking, he was actually trying to whack off the gate. I have a huge steel gate. He
Mhm.
was really trying to use the axe to sever the steel hinges into the
Wow.
rock wall, and he made no headway. There's still some gashes and things like that. And so he then went to work on the security system, and I tell you, I'll have to say I was fairly impressed
Mhm.
because he really put his back into it. I mean, he was rearing back over his head, and I mean, it wasn't just little sissy hacks. This was full, all-out John Bunyan. I'm going to cut down a one of those sequoia trees in California swings of the axe. And so, yeah, he
Do
that
you think
was.
it helped his psychological state?
Well, I think that that's a good question. I don't know if he was more frustrated when he left or more calm. Maybe
Hmm.
that's a new form of therapy. There actually
Mm.
is a form of therapy like that in the U.S. It may be in the U.K. that you go out on a date and you throw an axe at a
And
board.
you beat up the partner that you're on a date with. Is that what you do? Because I don't think I should say that's a good idea.
Well, someone told me about a room, and there's a name for this. You may know the name for this, where you pay, I don't know, $50 or something, and they give you a baseball bat, and they have an array of things that are breakable, and you can smash everything. And there's blocks and bottles and
Mm.
jars and just things to smash. And so maybe that's a new form of therapy.
Do you think that people who decide that they need that are going to be helped by that, or are these things just ways to offset their anger?
That's a good question. I used to regularly recommend to get kids a punching bag, and instead of punching baby brother or older sister or somebody, they can go to the punching bag. I do think that it vents some energy. For instance, when I'm stressed a bit, I know that a great workout does me a lot of good, which is why I rarely will skip a workout. Last night, I was so tired. It was such a long day. I'd usually try to get in bed by 8 o'clock. It was already 9 o'clock, and it would have been very easy to skip the workout, but I went ahead and did it anyway. And so, yeah, I think it can be, but I think that can't be the only thing you do because it's not about really the energy or the level of whatever testosterone or whatever. It's really mindset. It's really mindset. And the thing is, when people do things like that, the brain loves associations, and the brain really could care less what the association is. We could, if it were ethical, which it wouldn't be, and people were willing, we could associate anything with anything. We could associate going to a steakhouse with eating out of the toilet.
Mm.
Eventually, people would do it, if we associated things long enough. Everything we do is really an association. I like to say that the human brain is sticky.
Mm.
So brain cells are sticky. And it's a bit like a fly trap, you know. So one thing sticks to another, sticks to another. That's why things like memory castles work so well. If you can walk in, oh, it gave a thumbs up. I didn't know I had my gestures on. A little thumb went up. I'm agreeing with myself. And so the brain is really, really sticky. That's why memory castles work. And so if you can pair a walking
Hey,
in your door with a card, and then you see something red, and that's a heart, and there's nine of them, well, that's nine of hearts. And if you compare that with something else, you're more likely to remember it. And so, since the brain is really sticky, to your question, if you pair not getting your way with some form of violence, then you're more likely to commit violence on something. And you can't carry your punching bag around with you. And
mhm.
so it's good to find other ways to think of, you know, that level of energy, whether it's frustration, anxiety, anger, whatever, and pair it with something else. If that makes sense,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, it does. It does. I was thinking of the other thing that you were saying as well. Where I was on a podcast came out today actually, with Doc Malik on the Doc Malik podcast. Beautiful guy, a beautiful fella. Went down to visit him in studio, which was a really nice experience. And one of the last questions he asked me was, is there anything special you want to say to people, like good advice, etc., or something on the way out? Is there something you'd want to say? And my point was, don't be afraid to be wrong. Accept, embrace being wrong. Realize that that will only make you better, and it'll only make you other people trust you more, because even though you're wrong, you're admitting you're wrong, and that's what people want. They want to be able to. And a lot of the reason why I think people probably get to the point where they're screaming and trying to break down hinges off metal gates in and concrete walls is because they've got to a point where they can't actually look at what they themselves have done wrong and have a hard time letting that go. Would you say
You're
that's one of
exactly
the
right. Yeah, I mean,
what,
I'm
what
just going to say you're exactly right, you know, but what people don't understand is the more you're willing to be wrong, the more deeply you can be right. And so the more you're willing to be wrong, your brain is testing out these hypotheses. So being wrong is not really being wrong. It's really just testing out and picking different hypotheses, which I call it a bit of a snowflake phenomenon. The brain is full of snowflakes of thoughts. And the key to a healthy life is picking out the ones that are the most accurate and realistic thoughts. Accurate, realistic thoughts. ART. There's an art to life, and that is accurate, realistic thinking. But you can't get there unless you're willing to have some hypotheses that get challenged. And here's something, one of the things that I love, and this is actually, by the way, my 1872 Lyon College t-shirt.
Mhm.
It's where I went to undergrad school and where I discovered the magnificent Sir Anthony Flew, who I believe is from your neck of the woods, though he's
Mm.
passed away now. And back in those days, in the early 80s, Sir Anthony was known as the world's most famous atheist
Mm.
because he went around debating that there, in fact, was no God. But he was such a powerful thinker that, and he told a story of a believer and a skeptic. And it's such a fascinating story that the believer says to the skeptic who asks him, "Who tends your garden?" And the believer says, "Well, I have an invisible gardener." And the skeptic says, "Well, that's interesting. How do you know that you have an invisible gardener?" "Well, because my garden grows." And he says, "Well, how do you know?" And he said, "Well, we can put up," the skeptic says, "let's put up fences and sensors and, you know, whatever, and try to catch this invisible gardener." To which the believer says, "Oh, no, no, no. Since he's invisible, he's immune to all those. He's immune to you ever capturing any evidence of him." And to which the skeptic says, as does Antony Flew, or did Antony Flew, then how does your invisible gardener differ from a fairy tale? So it's a bit like saying I have a fairy in my pocket that is invisible so that you could never see them. And you see so many people on social media that they are so hooked to their beliefs, they need not have any evidence whatsoever, not realizing that the more you begin to falsify your own beliefs, recognize that there may be actually fairly solid arguments against what you believe, your argument, your belief, your position actually becomes stronger. Otherwise, it's just a fairy tale.
Mm. Yeah. Now, there's another point of what you were saying earlier, where you were saying it's quite normal for clinical psychologists to do certain work on the East or West Coast, but in Central America, within family units, that's less, it's less of a go-to. Is that partially due to there being more, I suppose, religious support in Central America and religious institutions, and so people rely on other institutions and organizations to do things like that, and that the East and West Coast is much more atheist?
That's a good question. I don't think it's actually the atheism thing. A lot of people don't know that California, which is fondly known as the land of fruit and nuts in the United States.
Yes, indeed.
No
I know
offense
what
to
you
my
mean.
California friends,
Yeah.
but my California friends tell me these things. I just repeat them. Don't shoot the messenger. And so I think it's something different. I think it's really kind of a cultural thing is one. The other thing is the central part of the U.S. has been overlooked for so many years by Washington. As a matter of fact, I don't recall which political election it was, but it's such a major, goof, faux pas that one of the political people talked about where I live in Arkansas being in the flyover zone. You would never stop there. It's just flyover country, as in it's useless, it's worthless. The people that live there, who cares about those people? They're not going to swing a vote anyway. And so it's not just a single thing, a single episode. I think that we've seen it elevate and escalate over the years where there's just a lot of distrust and a lot of conspiracy theories going
Mm.
on about Washington. And how do you know someone's lying? There's really two ways uh, for around here that you know someone's lying. They're either an attorney or they're a politician. So if they're in those groups, they're probably just fibbing to you. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of distrust, there's a lot of disgust because people that live where I live think that, the two coasts, East Coast, West Coast, and Washington kind of pushing it, has for so long tried to cram down our throats what we should believe.
Mhm.
And of course, they're doing all this in the name of free speech. I mean, let's get that straight. Um, everybody in the U.S. has free speech as long as you're exercising the speech that is okay to exercise. So if you're not exercising that kind of free speech, then that's not okay. Uh, and, and that's kind of what's happened in the U.S. So it's become very, very contentious between political groups. I'm not a politician. I don't really get into politics. This is me assessing from the outside. I can't do anything about a lot of those things, but I think that part of that is also filters down to professional people, a distrust in physicians, a distrust in mental health professionals like myself. And I once had a pastor that said he had to come visit me. Certainly, is it for you or someone else? He said, no, it's because some of my members, church members, they come and see you for therapy. So he really wanted to vet me to make sure that I wasn't an evil practitioner of the psychological arts.
Oh, you, and
And
then he
so,
found out you were, and then boom.
and so, of course, what I did when he first came is I said, well, to get started, I always like to start out with a brief session of hypnosis if you'll look deeply into my eyes. It really freaked him out. I thought he was going to leave, but he stayed the full time and found out I wasn't maybe the demon that he had imagined me to be.
Yeah, I also I mean maybe this is just a foreign point of view, but do you think there would be anything in the idea that United States might actually be three separate countries that have all been jammed together in that sense that there's a massive difference between East Coast, West Coast, and Central America?
Um,
Dangerous, sorry.
I think it depends on. It's a good question. I think that interestingly, and I'll use my wonderful father-in-law for this example. I think
Uh-oh.
overall, a lot of what people see in the media about three different countries or two different countries and all the social conflict, it exists, but I think it's kind of a microcosm because in real life, here's what happens. You have people where I live that they love the liberal side of things and despise the conservative side of things. And then you have vice versa. My father-in-law, for instance, he is a huge Harris Biden supporter and he utterly despises Trump, cannot stand him, as does his good friend. And so they will sit there and criticize and mock and, put down, Trump and all that. But then their other very, very dear friend is very, very pro-Trump. And they get along famously. They love each other. They have discussions. They talk about things. They snicker. They poke at each other. And so the beautiful thing about where I live is no, it's not on the verge of civil war. People can get very passionate, but thankfully you have other people that can kind of take it in stride, and for the most part, kind of see it how I see it. The first president I voted for was Ronald Reagan. Now, some may crucify me, but he was my favorite president. He was
He's
such
funny.
a
He's
magnificent communicator. I mean, talk about one-liners. No one has better other
quick
than,
too.
huh?
He was quick too. He was
Yes,
really
he was.
quick.
Yeah, very, very snappy, very
Yeah,
snappy. My
yeah.
favorite is he was debating, was it Dukakis or somebody? And he said, I refuse to allow age to become an issue in this political race. I will not, for political purposes, criticize the youth and inexperience of my opponent. I mean, that was just masterful. And the
Yeah.
great thing about that, Johnny, is back in that day, I'm sure you remember, people seem to have more character. They seem to, even if your opponent told a funny joke, you would laugh about it. You didn't take yourself too seriously. You wanted to win, but you still gave, due courtesy, care, respect.
Hmm.
And in that day and age, it just seemed like, I don't know, at my age, at my young age back then, because this was back in the early '80s, that it just had a different tenor than it does today. And there's a lot of mudslinging and things like that that I don't really get into. And so it's a interesting progression. But I think that the U.S. will hold together just fine. I think
Hmm.
that the legacy news media sells drama and trauma. And so they will paint that onto other situations. And I would encourage people not to take that, too very seriously.
Hmm.
But that's a great question. I was sitting there talking, and my wife was calling me. I have to send her a quick message saying,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
on the Johnny Vedmore NEWSPASTE show. You're calling me in the middle of a live stream.
Well, I tell you what, for hearing all of that really makes me it gives me loads of different thoughts. It makes me want to go back to the beginning then, because you're a little bit younger than me. You're in your 30s. Is that correct?
Oh,
Yeah.
am I really? Wow. I need to send you some free coffee, my friend.
I know how to get my free coffee. Yeah, no, so you were probably let me make a wild guess. You were born 1972.
Wow, man, I love you more the more you speak.
Oh wow, okay. You're as old as Peter Thiel, is that what you're saying? You were born 1967.
I'm as old as my nose and a bit older than my teeth.
Oh wow, okay, okay. So
No, no,
in
no.
your
I'm
30s.
reaching my I'm reaching three scores, Abraham Lincoln would put it.
Ooh, Wow. Well. It's been a funny old time. You would have because I was born 1980, so I got
Oh my
but
word.
I spend a lot of my time in the time around where you were born and beyond because I do a lot of my research is history, and it's usually Cold War intelligence stuff. It's usually in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and it was a completely different time. You're right. I mean, mentally, people. I was saying to someone yesterday, I was watching a clip on something. It was a load of old women from they were relatively young women actually from the late 50s, early 60s, and they're looking at a strapless dress, like a dress that comes around like that. They were, oh my God, never ran by us. Maybe in London, in those nightclubs, you'd see that, but never ran by us. Oh no, we wouldn't have any of that. And you know, each woman gave this look like of shock, like it was an Indian soap opera, and the camera's gone on to them and gone, oh my God, I can't believe who would you would even think about it. But nowadays, the whole world has changed. When do you think that happened? I mean, it's not. I'm not expecting a scientific answer on this, but when do you think that moment where the character was lost or
Gosh,
changed?
good for you noticing that progression. By the way, yeah, that was a commercial or something on British TV that you just talked about.
Mm, yeah,
You know
maybe.
the most famous three words of my era in the U.S. The most famous three words of my era in the U.S. Since you're talking about three old ladies, is this: "Where's the beef? Where's the beef?" It was a Wendy's commercial, and
Uh-huh.
these three older women are at the counter at some XYZ burger joint with a little bitty thin patties, pulling apart the bun. And there was no such thing as viral back then because it was before the internet. But
Mhm.
that went viral on TV. People loved it, and they still do. You guys look
Uh,
that up. Where's the beef?
well, for us, around probably roughly around the same time, maybe a little bit later, was the dog that would say sausages. So, I mean that was amazing. Every single compilation had the dog that would go sausages. I don't think he was really doing it, but you know, we all used to live in an illusion, watching game shows, watching TV from that period is fantastic because everybody's they're so aware that they're being watched, and now it's kind of
Hmm.
like given, you know, taken for or expected that we're going to be watched, yet still people react like they're in private a lot of the time. They still keep some of that character, but the times have changed and they seem out of kilter. I'm amazed by where did you actually grow up then?
Nashville, near Nashville, Tennessee,
Oh
the world
wow.
capital of country music.
Yeah, okay. So what was that like growing up?
Back then where I lived, it was the hills. My granddad was a dairy farmer. He also was a goat and sheep farmer. I remember watching him shear sheep, which was sold to make clothing and things like that. And I recall he would pick me up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to do his milk run. That was the day where he would actually drive his own milk truck and deliver his milk to various grocery stores. And so that was really interesting. I remember being taken to see Johnny Cash's really
Oh,
famous,
oh.
I don't know what you call it. It was like a coin car. He had coins um, glued all over the vehicle. And so it was the early days when Opryland was first opened, the big theme park, right near where the shooting was, by the way, unfortunately, recently. And so it was, in some ways, other than, some of the tragedy I went through with my mother, losing my mother, a really idyllic childhood. Um, and I'll tell you a funny story about Nashville that my grandmother told me. There was where we live has been or used to live was bought up by Garth Brooks, the famous country music singer.
Hmm.
And he bought out everybody in the area but one old man who was a holdout and would not sell. And so Brooks would send all of his representatives over to try to buy this guy out. And he would not sell. And he looked up over the hill one day at a guy coming with a farm tractor. And he thought, well, who is this trespasser, this interloper? And he got closer and he got off of his Garth Brooks driving the farm tractor himself. He was so dedicated into buying all the property. And he finally struck a deal with the old man who said, if you let me live here till I die and give me that tractor, you've got a deal. And they shook hands, and that's exactly what happened.
Awesome. That's a
So the
good, yeah.
convenience store, a lady, people come there from all over trying to hunt down celebrity homes, Carrie Underwood or, Luke Bryan, all the famous people's homes. And so she thought she would stop in at the convenience store because, the guy that works there surely may know where Garth Brooks lives. And he simply said, ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. And she was so frustrated. She went to get a soda and she saw a guy at the back of the store. So she asked him, he's in a ball cap. He says, ma'am, look, sir, can you tell me where Garth Brooks lives? He said, ma'am, I sure can't. I'm sorry, I can't tell you. She left. They winked at each other, the clerk and the guy in the cap was Garth Brooks. She had asked Garth Brooks where his home was. He didn't lie.
Yeah.
He said, ma'am, I'm sure I can't tell you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I've met a couple of I met a couple of celebrities early on because when I first went into work, I went to work in a five-star hotel at Hilton, and it was just opening up in the city I'm from, Cardiff, and the Wembley Stadium, the main stadium in England, was being closed, knocked down, and they were building a new Wembley. So our stadium, which had just been opened up, the Millennium Stadium, got opened up by Prince Charles and had all of these famous people, and then the Rugby World Cup and all of the concerts that were originally for Wembley came to Cardiff. So we had like, well, as soon as I went into work, suddenly we had this bustling city that was full of all of the celebrities that would no longer go to England to do their bits, and all of these sports people. And I found it very interesting. Celebrity psychology was very interesting because celebrities are just human beings, completely just, you learn very soon. You meet, I mean, one of my favorite people to meet was someone who many people wouldn't even know, probably, a guy called, I think his name's Willard White, and he's an opera singer, Porgy and Bess. He's amazing. So his voice, I remember I had my back turned, I was on a reception desk and I was shuffling through papers, and there was this hello, and it was slow and deep and slow, and it made my legs tremble. And I was like, oh, oh, I'm in love. Straight away. He had me at hello. He didn't have his house keys. He had locked them in the theater, so he had to stay the night in the hotel, and had come to us. But I got to meet, what I found interesting was kind of what you're talking about there. I found more interesting was the effect celebrities have on other people, because about a year after I had finished working in this hotel, I had met all of these the rugby players, for us in Britain, rugby players, it's like American football stars or whatnot. Some of them are really famous. And one of them was a New Zealand player called Jonah Lomu, who was a massive giant of a man, enormous. He was one of the best rugby players that New Zealand had to offer in New Zealand history. And he had like, I'd met him a couple of times in the Hilton, but he had thrown over my girlfriend at the time, his mum, her mum, he had thrown her over his shoulder at one point and went running around the hotel with her as a joke, like, he was a really lovely guy. All of the guys were really lovely. But about a year after I was working in the hotel, I was working in a normal everyday shop. And one day I was upstairs and I was in the stock room, and this was a really big electrical store, and everybody emptied out suddenly, went running out of the warehouse altogether, just like masses of people. And I quickly ran and went, what's going on? They were like, Jonah Lomu's downstairs, and they were the whole of everybody in the shop just went to look, just to stare, kind of like mesmer, kind of like you'd expect Jesus would have that sort of reception back at his peak, and I found that very interesting. The psychology that lingers around celebrities, how people perceive them. What can you tell? Because we've talked about some part of this before on a couple of shows on TNT, but what can you tell people about why people tend to treat celebrities as though they're something bigger and much more than they are, that they are just humans?
I've always wondered about that, so I've studied that for quite a few decades, actually. I think I would start with thinking about Carl Jung. I've always been very Jung at heart, but Carl Jung, and he talked about there being archetypes. So I think you can best understand the celebrity effect or the psychologist celebrity if you are a bit eclectic when it comes to psychology. So if you think about Jung's psychology um, paired with Viktor Frankl or a famous psychiatrist, wonderful story, Soren Kierkegaard, as well as mainly the existentialists, Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre. And so Jung talked about there being archetypes. I think you could also bring in there, which is where I think Jung probably got it, is from Plato. Plato had the allegory of the cave. And Paul, by the way, Paul in Scripture talks about this, that though we see through a glass darkly, so everything that we have here is just a representation of something greater. I remember in college, wonderful undergraduate theology professor whose name, I kid you not, was Dr. Robert K. Holier, a theology professor, Holyrx, who came to my wedding, by the way. And he talked about a cup. Well, this is a cup, but this is not a perfect cup. But somewhere in the universe, maybe on a different dimension, there must be somewhere a perfect cup. And so all of life is really trying to get to that ideal that we'll never get to, but we find meaning in doing our best and trying to get there. And so bring Jung into the frame here, and Jung would say that there are universal archetypes. And so here is the explanation, but it's also, unfortunately, the problem. And so you have celebrities that are an archetype of a single thing. Might look at Michael Jordan and say the perfect basketball player. Well, probably it's not also the perfect chef. He's certainly not the perfect baseball player. That did not work out well for him. But he's an archetype of an athlete in that field. Or you might be like Gary Kasparov, the perfect chess player that played Big Blue. Fascinating thing. I couldn't believe that ever happened. Or Magnus, or whoever beat him. Magnus was the current best worldwide chess champion until this other kid came along. The best radio host. So all of us are what we are, and we're trying to rise to a level of the perfect cup. Now, the problem gets to be, especially in the mind of the celebrity, that if they're as close as a human can be to the shape of a perfect, say, singer, and then they over assimilate that therefore I'm also great at another profession, a way of thinking, a way of living, and that's probably the biggest problem. It's a problem for the celebrity, and it's a problem for those that don't understand that just because someone is a fabulous pop star, they may have the most unhealthy life you could ever imagine, but they are a great pop star, but their life sucks. And in therapy, in cognitive behavioral psychology, which is what I do most of the time, we talk about fairy tailing. And so that is a cognitive distortion of fairy tailing to look at somebody and they just seem to almost feel every expectation. They're the Taylor Swift of singing or whatever. Well, then they must know the best way to live. So I, as a fan, am going to dress like them and talk like them and walk like them and try to become them because they're an archetype, but they're only an archetype of one thing. And to add on to that, and I was thinking about this morning because I just did a space about, and I entitled it, I love to be punny, about your big second date, about how to have a great second date. So there are two dates in our life that we need to have the best first date possible, and we need to have the best second date possible. The first date, and then what really also matters is the dash. So we're really dashing between date number one and date number two. First date, second date. The first date's the date of your birth. The second date, the big date, is the date of your death. And life is a dash on your tombstone in between. So here's the problem with celebrities. Celebrities start out wanting something that's pretty basic. They want everyone to know their name because they think there's some value in that. They want to make lots and lots of money because they think there's value in that. And there's value in both of those. I would say be careful if I'm talking to a celebrity now, be careful what you ask for. You may not like what you get. I think that fame would be a bit of a curse. I don't really. I mean, I love doing these things, but it's certainly not so everybody knows who I am. I would love to go out and get a latte and no one knows who I am, But you give that up when you become a celebrity. And so the problem gets to be that they start out in good faith, but then they come to see that it's not such a great thing, everyone knowing who I am. Therefore, strike number one, that box of meaning is now empty because everyone knowing who I am becomes meaningless. And then all the money. Well, how much money can you have? One of my favorite stories about that is Malcolm Forbes Sr., who started Forbes magazine, was once famously asked, how much, he was a billionaire, how much more money would you like to have? How much more money do you need to make? And I loved his answer. Just one more dollar. It's always just one more dollar. So then the celebrity gets to the point that they have everything that they can imagine. And so then that box of meaning becomes empty also. And the only actors, superstars, that you find still practicing this trade in which they're an icon are like a famous violinist. I think I've talked to Johnny about this, who was going to be interviewed. And the interviewer found him practicing, I think it was his violin or something, and asked him after all these years, you're a master, why would you still be practicing? And his answer is the best ever, because I think I'm still making progress. The people, I think I'm still making progress. And so the Anthony Hopkins of the world, one of my all-time favorite actors. I saw him in this movie as a young man that scared the holy crap out of me. It was the freakiest movie called Magic, where this freaking little ventriloquist doll was an evil ventriloquy doll, and you guys can watch it. Aerosmith, Steven Tyler. Why would you still do this? Only because you find meaning in it. And so the things that celebrities don't understand, which most people don't understand, and I've said on Johnny's radio show, is that life is a gift. I think we would all agree with that. It's actually a gift box. It's wrapped in pretty paper. It has a really pretty bow around it, and it is handed to you on your first date. But the only thing that matters is you understand what's in it. And so what's in it? What's the secret? The secret is there's nothing in it. You're literally on your first date given an empty box that through the dash of life, that little hyphen on your granite tombstone, that you, not life, not someone else, not Johnny, doesn't fill your box for you because we don't have access for it, but rather you put meaning into that box so that on your Second date, the last day, the last breath of your life, you've had a full life only because of what you placed in the box. And it can't be money, and it can't be fame, and it can't be getting your way. All those are hollow. It's something greater. So it's really about, as I said in my space today, building a legacy, choosing which wall you're going to lean your ladder of life. And some people spend their whole life with their ladder leaning against the wrong wall, and they get to the top of it and look over and say, well, holy crap, that was useless. And then it's too late. So I think that it's really, as Viktor Frankl would say, once you find a proper why, the how doesn't matter. Once
Hmm.
you find a proper why to do a thing, helping people, giving something back, sowing seeds of whatever, maybe not reaping the harvest, but once you find a proper why, the how doesn't matter. And I saw a person, I don't remember the artist's name, at the Grammys said, honor the art, honor the art, be faithful to the art. And that has nothing to do with money. That has nothing to do with fame. If you honor whatever art you have, you'll have everything in life that you need. Be a DJ, be the best you possibly can be, a therapist, be the best you possibly can be, and you'll make sure that the ladder's leaning against the right wall. And a lot of celebrities, they never do that. Jim
Yeah.
Carrey said, he had a wonderful quote. I wish I remembered it specifically, but he said, I think everyone should be rich and famous just so they can see that that's not what matters in life.
Mhm.
I think everyone should be rich and famous just so they can see that's not the thing that matters in life. So
Yeah.
have a pet, give back to something. We have too many selfish people in the world.
I got too
You-
many pets. They're,
Too
they're
many pets. Who
surrounding
is
me at the
this?
moment. This is Bella Boo. She's very
Oh,
cute. She's
she's
defending me
beautiful.
from the cat right now because she gets jealous. Past 9 o'clock, she gets atrociously jealous and thinks that the cat's gonna steal all my affections and maybe her special dog biscuits at the
That's
same time.
amazing.
But they
And
they
who
go
is this over
walking
your
together in the
shoulder,
park.
Johnny? Over your left
Well,
shoulder's like a black lab.
what? Which? Oh no, that's just one of the NEWSPASTE themes. Because
Oh,
I,
okay,
to be
okay.
perfectly honest, I spend a lot of my time surrounded by cats and dogs. In that sense,
That's awesome.
I love going. This little girl's off the lead, so we go running around, and she's just next to me, and she's extremely well trained. But it means that I go around and I meet lots of the dog owners around, and spend a lot of time talking, shooting the breeze in parks, just like life. Like it makes me feel good as well, just to
Oh,
communicate with those in the neighborhood. So I've got many a black lab in my life, to be honest. Many, though black labs outside don't really spend a lot of time there with humans. They want to go off and chase their ball and have a sniff and do the rest of it. When you were talking about that perfect, like the idea of the perfect cup in the world, it's like, that idea of what a perfect cup is gonna change. Not only will the cup itself deteriorate over time depending on what it's actually made with, but so will what we perceive as being the perfect cup will change during that time as well. So a lot of this is just the chase for perfection is a lot about perception, and just trying to there is no way that you can actually, like with the fame as well, with life, what you're talking about there, that making the dash meaningful, so that the dates in between, the dates either side, but the dash is the extremely important part. But it's all going to be how well you do is all going to be dependent on the perception of the time, not by only yourself but by everyone around you. So it all of these worries, all of these concerns, don't they just lead back to thinking, well, it doesn't matter. All I can do is as much as I can to make everything better, make everything
mm,
happier. Is that kind of the best psychology? Because I keep coming across the idea that when I try and work out what this thing is. So, is there a God? Is there heaven? What are we living on? Are we living in a reality? Are we a bunch of simulations all the way down? If we were a billion or infinite number of simulations currently going off within simulations, or just a computer program running in an alien spaceship somewhere, what does that actually mean? Because it always comes back to me being the center of my universe, and that's all I have. So the rest of it is just irrelevant, isn't it?
Well, I think you nailed it right there. I mean, you beat me to the punch. Good for you because I think all those things are fun to think about. I'm a great lover of David Chalmers, and he really ignited back. Oh gosh, a quarter of a century ago now, I guess, my intense interest in the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious, collectively known as consciousness, and what is it? And we really have a hard time explaining that. So it's really, really amazing to think about things. AI going to become conscious? Is there a unconscious aspect that AI has of itself? All those things are really, really fun. But when it gets down to me and my existence, there's really only one thing that we are meant to do in life, and the what do you want to call it? God, the universe. I call it the Creator. The Creator expects us to do is the very basic um, attribute of the Creator. And then this is back to Dr. Holier again. Shout out Dr. Holier is the biggest attribute of the Creator is existence. If the Creator is perfect, he must possess all perfections. It is more perfect to exist than not exist, therefore, he exists. And that is what we're here meant to do. We are meant to exist. Now, if you want to think about all those fabulous things, fantastic. That's great. I'm into it. Let's have a great latte and a couple of hours discussion. We'll have fun and do it every week, and maybe probably won't figure it out before we die. But the greatest job we have as humans is existing in whatever way. And so that's what we should be about the business of doing. The thing about existence is you didn't choose it, number one, and you can't escape it. You didn't choose it and you can't escape it. You can only decide what you put in it. But what is so fascinating about people, especially celebrities who have the wherewithal to exist almost any way they would want, they then put things into it and then gripe and complain about it. I think that celebrities have a greater, this is only my theory, you neuroscientists out there, you can do a study and check this out. But maybe you can find these in an fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging device. I think that celebrities have a much higher proliferation of a particular type of neuron called a BGC cell. And you can almost pick out the ones that have a higher proliferation than others just by listening to them. And of course, I'll tell you what the BGC cell is. It is the bitch, gripe, complain cell. And so celebrities seem to never come to an end of, bitching, griping, complaining about something. And I remember, well, my neuropsychology professor, the amazing Dr. Elkanon Goldberg, he is the student of the founder of neuropsychology, Alexander Lyria. And he defected from Russia, I guess back in the maybe 60s or something like that, because he and Lurie were both Russians, and he's now up in New York, just an amazing individual who also loves dogs. He had a dog named Brit because it was a humongous. What is the huge dog? A British
A
something.
British bulldog.
It may have
British
been a British
bulldog.
bulldog. This was one scary looking dog.
Yeah, yeah, could be.
But I remember, but he would talk about, he asked me what I did, and he would talk about the worried well of America. You know, he grew up in the profession in Russia, treating people that had part of their body's blown off, part of their head's blown off. And then you come to America, the land of milk and honey, and all anybody wants to do is, they got all these BGC cells, complain about everything. And he said, so it's a syndrome of worried wellness. And so the problem gets to be that of the greatest addiction in America. The greatest addiction in America is not cocaine, it is not opiates, it is not benzodiazepines. The greatest addiction in America is comfort. People are so addicted to being comfortable that they think if you steal their My Pillow or whatever while they're sleeping, that they're being tortured and punished. And so I speak in spaces regularly that when you find such meaning and comfort and getting your way, then what happens is your radar for uncomfortable things just grows bigger. So the bigger your radar for not getting your way, the smaller your life becomes. And I don't want a smaller life. And so I find meaning in suffering. I don't do it to myself on purpose, but I will do things that are very, very hard. I will lift weights, and that is very, very hard. I will do cardio that is very, very hard. I will have someone disagree with me, and I will bite my lips and keep my freaking mouth shut. And Johnny knows me. That's very hard. And so, one of the most useful skills I found in life is becoming an expert, especially in relationships, to not getting your way and giving more than you take. Look at Mother Teresa. The most joyful people in the world. You notice I didn't say happy. That's happy is not a feeling, by the way. We may come back to that. But the most joyful people in the world tend to be also the most sacrificial. Not the ones who are diehard, I must have my way, thinking that all of life is a Burger King, just here to give you your every desire. And if you got that, my friends, you would be worse off and you would die less happy. I've seen it time and time again. It's amazing.
100%. I would. One of I had food poisoning twice from a Burger King too, so that nearly killed me too. So there you go.
Oh my goodness, twice.
It's interesting. Is it? Yeah, it was the same one as well. I should have known better. I really should have known better. But I liked those chicken royales back in the day. What can I say?
Chicken Royales. I forgot that that's what you guys call them over there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know what you call them, but this is it. Thinking about the psychology of celebrities, because I've seen a lot. I mean, like I say, I saw a lot of celebrities um, going to excess, staying in a five-star hotel, snorting lots of cocaine, hiring prostitutes, partying in rooms till the morning comes, and then going back home, drink driving in their cars afterwards. And I always felt that there's some aspect of that psychology around celebrities is from not originally being from money and then suddenly coming into lots of money or suddenly having access to lots of money. And it comes to the point that when you talked about Jim Carrey earlier, that's probably someone who's had now, at first lived like that and then had that experience to say, well, actually, I want to be a normal person. I want to be a human being. And then learning that, okay, now I've got all of this money and I'm being a human being. Then you've got back to another stage. But I kept meeting people who were staying in this swanky hotel, who were sirs, who were lords, who had come from wealthy families. They were the least likely to complain about anything in the hotel, and they were the most polite guests as well. They would always do as much as they can. They wouldn't expect other people to do things for them. And I found it a very peculiar that their psychology was that much different. Is it the at some point coming into wealth, losing wealth, all of these things that really make for adults that act like children?
It's funny you should mention that. I'm doing a space Monday about that very thing because a friend of mine on X, Sega Links, put up a video. It's just, I don't know what to say. It's just the weirdest. It's just the weirdest thing. It's almost like if I acted this way when I was a child, I'd be turned over someone's knee and spanked promptly. It's these. What do they need? They need a good spanking, and
Mm.
so I just you don't need a safety officer on the airplane. You need somebody that can give a good spanking to these.
I think the celebrities, from my research, might enjoy the spanking, and it
That's,
might just
that's
all get out of it might get out of control, to be honest.
Yeah, you
Just
can't
from
do
my
that. Too many
research.
may like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love that. Give me another, please. But I think it's but if you don't know how to accept hard things, hardship, lack of comfort, then there are mechanisms in the brain that don't get the exercise they need at impulse control.
Mhm.
So impulse control is a bit like a bicep or any other muscle. It's a use it or lose it proposition. And so if you don't learn that you need to, if there's not consequences, I like to say often that Elvis, big fan of Elvis. I'm sitting here with you in a time zone I call EPT, Elvis Presley time.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And
I'm
so
in Tom
Elvis,
Jones time,
Tom
so there you
Jones
go.
time. Hey, is he still
It's
living?
Yeah, yeah, but it's not unusual. Oh, sorry, I
Oh,
couldn't help
wow.
it.
Tom Jones. Man, he's
Yeah,
been around a
Tom
long time.
Jones
So Elvis and Prince and Michael, gosh, what's his name? From
Jackson.
Wham.
Oh, wow.
So I can't think of it either. But yeah, Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson. Man, isn't that something, Johnny? We're losing our memory. They all died of the same thing. I always say that they all died of exactly the same thing. I'll ask my patients, what do you think they died of? Oh, I thought they died of drug use. No, 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 no. They did not. They died of always getting their way. If
Mm.
Elvis, Michael Jackson, Prince, and can't think of Wham's name.
Oh,
Of
George,
other artists.
Wham, did you say? As in
Yeah,
George
Wham
Michael?
with
George
Michael
Michael. George
George Michael. I
Michael.
had it backwards.
Yeah.
I was saying the last name first. If they would have hired somebody and said, "Look, I'm going to pay you $1 million a year," they could have afforded it. $1 million a year. All you got to do is find strategic occasions to not give me my way. And if I balk at it, I've got to pay you 10 million. It's in a contract. It would have saved their life.
Mhm.
Elvis would be like 98 years old now or something. Can I have another fried peanut butter banana sandwich? No, Elvis, you may not, mister. You've had plenty today.
What I needed. Oh.
No, Elvis's favorite food, peanut butter banana sandwiches fried. Probably killed him as fast as all the drugs and the drinking and everything.
All that
But yeah, he would have
protein.
still been around. And so, yeah, that's the thing. It's one of the things that I really pride myself on raising my son that with a certain vitamin. And most parents have children who are deficient of this vitamin. It's not A, B, C, or D. It's vitamin N, O, vitamin no. It's a big horse pill of a pill.
Doesn't sound
They
like a
think
good
they're going,
vitamin to me.
yeah, they think they're going to choke on it, but they'll get it down. I look for occasions to tell my son that he couldn't have something because the world brings plenty more of that. The world brings plenty more of that. And I like to say that, well, talking about movie psychology, here's you some movie psychology, and I use this all the time that Christian Bale playing Batman in the the new remake of the Batman movies. He's going around the world, getting acquainted with the criminal element of the world. He winds up in prison, and the big prison gang and the big prison bully approaches him, and the big prison bully says, "I'm the devil." And Batman to be says, "No, you're not. You're just practice." So here's the lesson, parents. Your children may think you're the devil, but you're not. But it is your job to be good practice because they're going to meet the devil and you're practice for the devil. And they will be ill prepared to meet the devils, plural, out in the world unless you teach them to be experts at not getting their way.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I tell you, there's some people may write in the chat that Christian, there's been two Batmans since Christian Bale, I think. There's been two Batmans. There's been Ben Affleck and Robert Pattinson
Oh,
since.
that's right.
So it's a sign you're getting old. When the Batmans start to get as old as Adam West, then you know you're in trouble.
Oh, he's one of the best Batmen, Adam West,
Yo,
one of the best Batmen.
definitely.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
that era of Batman was fantastic. I've seen some interviews with the guy who, an amazing actor who used to play the Joker on that. I can't remember his name.
Oh yeah,
He,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Caesar something.
yeah,
Caesar
amazing.
Romero, I
Oh, he
think.
was amazing. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Such an amazing character, such an amazing human. Just, really, just vibrant. A lot of
And
the
then
people. What?
the Penguin was played by Rocky Balboa's trainer,
Oh, wow.
Burgess Meredith, who went on to be more famous playing Rocky in the Rocky movies as Rocky's Mick, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
actually the Penguin in the
Oh,
Adam West
look.
Batman
Oh
shows.
wow. And of course we all know Robin was horny as hell. We've learned that afterwards in all of the kiss and tell stories that have come out about the guy who played Robin, who
Oh,
was,
really?
yeah, the hundreds and hundreds of women. I mean, he was just flying
Oh, my
through them, you could
word.
say. There's a pun there. He was using all of his bat tools for that. I don't know if Robin was using bat tools,
One in
but
particular, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, we can skip over it. We can skip over it. Um, so I mean, do you watch a lot of movies? Because I know normally when I talk to you, you've had this amazing array of books in the background on
Yeah.
your bookshelf, and you have an amazing array. And that's always a sign that someone enjoys culture. Sometimes someone's just a reader and they're not a movie watcher, though. But do you enjoy movies?
Both. It's weird. I will really enjoy reading a book, and then I will very hesitantly watch a movie about the book,
Hmm.
and I'm almost sitting on the edge of my seat because I just don't want them to screw it up. I want to
Hmm.
enjoy the movie, and then sometimes I'll watch the movie first. And if I had a recommendation, I would always recommend watching the movie first because the book will always be better than the movie.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's certainly, and so yeah, I'm a huge movie buff. Um, I love taking stories from movies. I use the Batman story a lot. One of my other favorites that someone so kindly clipped the scene and put it in one of my spaces is when we were having a discussion about curing people of their pain. You know, like if I could go back in time and magically delete all the painful things I've been through, what I'd do it. Or if there was a pill that I could take or I could offer to somebody where they would stop suffering from a tragic death or some other tragedy, would they take it? Most people would immediately say yes, but I think that would be a mistake. And the movie I like to quote is the one with Spock's brother. We never knew that Spock had a brother, but indeed, I guess he does. In Star Trek lore, his name is Sybok. You know, I guess spelled P-S-Y. I don't know how they spelled it, but you know, psychology Sybok. And he's going around taking away everyone's pain. I mean, he even takes away McCoy's pain. And we know how much of a curmudgeon McCoy was. You know, Leonard McCoy. Damn it, Jim, I'm not a plumber, I'm a doctor, he would say. And so took away his pain. I think Spock was in enthralled to him and that kind of thing. And it's just such an amazing scene. You guys really should watch it. Where Sybok approaches Kirk. Kirk, let me take your pain. And Kirk rejects that. He said, leave my pain alone.
Hmm.
I want my pain. I need my pain. My pain is what made me what I am. And so I think things that I've been through in my life, if I could have stopped them at the moment, I would have. But in retrospect, I would change none of them, not a single
Hmm.
one, because I would be somebody, but I wouldn't be the me that I am. And I hope that some of your viewers kind of consider this in really embracing yourself and the person, the wonderful, magnificent person you've become, not in spite of the pain you've been through, but because of the pain that you've
Hmm.
been through.
Well, that's something I have to say I'm dealing with in my own life at the moment. Is that my family is disjointed, separated, a lot of history there. My dad was a bit of a naughty boy. He was also drank way too much and could become angry, violent, abusive when I was young. So that didn't help later on. And after my mum and dad divorced, my sisters tried to keep it all together. I wasn't interested. I rejected everything, and then my sisters rejected everything, and I was like, okay, I've got over it now. And everybody's kind of all over the place and scattered. And my dad's at the end of the road now. He's in hospital. It's clear that he's not going to be with us for much longer. And it's really hard to convince people who, to forgive and to forget and to remember that all of that pain, whoever gave it to you, at the end of it, there is no one there. They disappear into dust and they go off into wherever they go, and it's the end. And there needs to be a point of healing there. Well, I don't know. You're a psychologist. You could say something to that, I'm sure.
Well, the greatest gift you can ever give yourself is forgiving someone else. Forgiveness is not a gift to the other person. Forgiveness is a gift that you decide to give yourself. There's no forgetting. I tell people that come to my clinic that they'll say, can you help me forget this awful thing that happened to me or someone did to me? And I say, of course. Wait here. I'll be back in 90 seconds. Where are you going? They say. Well, I'm going to get the sledgehammer because to do that, I'd have to hit you in the head really hard. And you'll forget all kinds of things, like your name and how to go to the bathroom independently and all kinds of things. But that other memory would be gone too. Otherwise, the brain is really built. I think it's fascinating that the brain is actually built, and I think intentionally, to actually not remember the vanilla status quo easy times. I mean, we'll forget those. You really do forget most of the times that things go right, but you'll rarely forget when things go their worst. Now, why is that? I mean, even if you're not a believer in a creator or whatever, even from an evolutionary perspective, why would that be? And I think there's a good reason for it. I'll give you two. One is those difficult moments become like the thumbtacks of the clothesline that all the other members hang upon. So you've got difficult thing helps you kind of secure all the things in the middle. The other thing, well, maybe I'll give you three, is learning. I mean, you'd wind up burning your hand on the same stove if you didn't remember that you don't put your hand on the stove. And it kind of helps you figure out life. And the other thing I think is strength. I go to the gym and do difficult things because eventually, if I deal with that heavy lifting properly, I'm stronger because of it. And pain does not mean injury. This is back to the comfortability addiction we have in, well, worldwide. Well, not third world countries because they don't have that, but first world countries, self-entitled countries like yours and mine, France and lots of places, Australia, Canada, whatever. we have this addiction to comfort, not realizing that pain does not equal injury. We live in a society we think any pain is bad, any difficult emotion is bad. For heaven's sakes, my own field mistakenly calls non-preferred emotions negative. Well, why is that? I don't think they're negative. I think that's part of the human experience. Imagine taking a pill that got rid of anxiety. Well, you wouldn't survive the year. You'd be walking across the street and Johnny might say truck and you'd say, "Pfft," and you would ignore it because you have no anxiety and you'd be run over and made into a pancake. So it's really the most important experiences in our life
Mm.
are also the most difficult and the most painful because they're so transformative. No one ever struggled with winning a gold medal, but they struggle with coming in 32nd place.
Mhm.
Nobody ever struggles with I got the job and they struggle with not getting the job or being fired or so it's really in the struggle. I had a wonderful guest this morning that talked about trees that grow on mountaintops have roots that extend into the valleys because it's in the valleys where all the most fertile soil exists. So you
Mhm.
really have to have roots that extend into the deep, dark valleys if you're really
Mhm.
going to grow sturdy and strong. And then one more thing on forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Forgiveness does not mean putting your seal of approval on a behavior. Forgiveness simply means a inner realization that this person that may have done you wrong is no longer a danger to you. And that's really, really important because until you come to an understanding, at one time they may have been a danger or a threat, they no longer are, then you will go through your life over activating the fight
Yeah.
or flight mechanism in your brain, and you just, well, you'll die quicker yourself, because your radar is always on, always looking for the next shoe to drop or the next landmine to explode. And so I really trained myself to pretty quickly let things go. I was at my gate, with John Bunyan visited with the axe, and
Good
and
old
put his
John.
back into it. And I looked at it and I thought, well, this is why I have insurance. I wish it wouldn't have happened, but it did. I can't unhappen it. And everyone's safe, so we'll get it repaired. It's still broken, by the way. If you guys are going to break in, wait till I get it repaired so I can catch you on camera. So it's a bit about recalibrating your catastrophe scale. And some people, their catastrophe scale, everything winds up being a 10. Well, I like to say, well, but wait a minute, what is a true 10? In my life, what is a true 10? And once I establish that, then I can see that a lot of the things I thought were a 10 may be a 2 or a point 0.2. And so it's catastrophe scale recalibration can make your life so much more pleasant and peaceful, and well, you'll actually live longer.
I think I've heard you call it deca. Oh, I can't even. I wouldn't. Deca.
Decatastrophization.
Oh, there you go.
Decatastrophization.
Decatastrophization.
My dad would call that a $7 word.
Decatastrophization. Yeah, there you go. I can say it if I say it in that accent,
If you say
but
it in Arkansan, you'll get it.
yeah, yeah. You guys, you can't even spell your own state properly, and you don't even know what that means. Um, I was thinking when you were saying that, then I was thinking as well about a girl I met once upon a time. She was a sweet, kind-hearted soul. Um, she obviously had had an almost perfect upbringing with no, ex- well, a perfect in her eyes, or what the
Mm.
standard model you would believe would be, or no negative things happened to her throughout her life. And one time she asked me about my childhood, and I told her some of the things, and she went white. She was looked like, devastated by it. And I instantly felt sorry for her because I thought to myself, "Oh, you're so vulnerable and naive because you haven't had the experiences that kick you to the curb and make you have to get up." And that is the most dangerous. I would, she didn't feel afraid of the world, but I felt afraid of the world for her, because it is true. It is true. You need to have that kick up the butt here and there. What's your on a personal level, not related to a tidbit of psychological help, but on a personal level, what are your favorite movies?
Oh, wow, my favorite movies. Um,
And is it possible for you to have a favorite movie
yeah,
without
it's
it
really
being having a
hard actually.
psychological
I get
element?
so many there's so much great philosophy in Chevy Chase's Christmas Vacation that me and my wife talk
Oh
about
yeah,
that
I
all the
love
time,
it.
you know.
It was one of my favorites. Is the guy who played his brother Randy Quaid. I saw him on X the other day being crazy, and I was just like, oh, thank God he hasn't changed.
Oh my
It's just
goodness, Randy Quaid on X. That's
Oh,
amazing.
you honestly, you should put it in and have a look.
I
He's
need to look him up.
he's special. Oh,
Last
he's
I looked, he and his
special.
wife I thought were on the run from the IRS or something.
It was some drama with him and his wife. It was hilarious. It's a beautiful moment. But I used to love that movie. I mean, I'm not going to take it as your favorite movie of all time, even though it is up there in my opinion. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah. Me and my wife talk a bit about the are you kidding? We're on the ninth level of hell. You know, so there's all types of useful clips there, you know. She will finally use with me when I spend money, talk about, you know, the mother-in-law who's looking at all the lights and says, talk about pissing your money away. And so she'll quote that. But you know, one of the first that comes to mind is and this actor, wonderful, amazing actor, the great Jimmy Stewart, who was such a simple, humble soul that at the end of his life, the biggest movie star of the time, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I believe he played in, and so many others. Also played Charles Lindbergh, also played in my favorite movie, It's a Wonderful Life.
And
It,
so
it is
many
so,
Hitchcock movies as well.
a
And
lot of the hit, yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah, North by Northwest and all that, and Vertigo, I think.
and the
But he was
birds.
found at the end of his life by someone who just wanted to talk to him. And most movie actors, this day and age, oh, what are you doing? You know, leave me alone. But he was ever so kind. He and his wife were out hoeing their garden, and he took the time, leaned on his hoe, you know, and talked to the person. They took photos, which have now made it to the
Gave him in a Jimmy
internet.
Stewart voice. I can't do it unless I go,
That's
every
it.
time a bell rings, Mary.
That's
That's the
awesome.
best
That's
I could
awesome. I
do.
love it. Well, you guys should watch it. Don't wait till Christmas. Go ahead and watch it. But it just taught me that how big of an impact we have in the lives of others, and we don't even know.
Mhm.
And it's such a wonderful scene with Jimmy Stewart and Clarence, the angel who's
Mm.
trying to get his wings. And he is showing Jimmy Stewart what life would have been like if Jimmy Stewart got his wish to have never existed. Because Clarence meets Jimmy Stewart at the point of taking his life and by jumping off a bridge. And so Clarence shows him. He shows him what life would have been like. And that's what I try to show people when they come to me with such difficulties is how do you think life would have been like without you in it? And it's always a grand episode of ignoring important aspects of the situation. That is underthinking. Underthinking. I've never met anybody that overthought. I mean, seriously, tell somebody they think too much about stuff. I don't find people think too much. I think people don't think enough. I
Mhm.
find people that don't think about the right things. And so he was underthinking the impact he had had on those around him. There's so many nameless, faceless people tucked away in our subconscious whose lives that we have impacted and we shall never know. And earlier today, I was talking about that. There's a really great song. It's actually called "Thank You for Giving to the Lord." And there's a man who dies, and he is taken on a tour down the streets of the hereafter, and shown one person after another, after another, after another that he had no idea that he had so impacted their lives. You just don't know. It's not
Mm,
up to us to know. We're meant to not be harvesters of those experiencers. We're not to be gatherers. We're to be sowers.
mm,
And you may sow the seeds of your life and never reap anything other than the fact that you're doing that in which you find meaning, but that person has gone away from an interaction with you forever changed. You just never know. And
mm,
as we always say, of course, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean that someone's life was not changed.
mhm.
And how many would be enough? How many would be enough? I think one. One would be enough, you know. And so that's a favorite movie. It's a Wonderful Life. And goodness, I'll have to think of another one. That's the one that the uh, caught me off guard. That's one at the top of my mind, I would say. But
But
maybe
for
another
me,
one will come up shortly.
Yeah, for me, when I get asked that question, it's like I've got some automatic responses, but there's loads. It depends what time you ask me. I mean, my automatic responses for movies that I truly love, and not ones for nostalgic reasons, but other reasons would be something called Jean de Florette and Manon de Source, French movies, two of them, which is about a family with it's Gerard Depardieu when he was younger.
Ah,
He's a hunchback. He plays a hunchback. His wife's an opera singer. He's made a little bit of money. He goes off to the country. He's got this dream. It's a dream, a beautiful dream of having this little house in the middle of nowhere where they can grow their own vegetables. He can keep rabbits and other livestock. They can be self-sustaining. They can bring up their young daughter Manon and be happy. Yeah, when he moves in, there's two very devious neighbors who know that the water well, is on his land. And no, Gerard Depardieu's character is the kind that would share that well with anybody. They start off with a point of their own, projecting their own ideas of how they interact with people onto him, and they block up the well, so that all of his garden won't grow and he won't be able to succeed in all of his aims. And it's an amazing. I won't spoil it because Jean de Florette and Manon de Source, everybody should watch. It takes you to peaks, takes you to troughs. It carries you left, right, sideways, and ends in the most spectacular way where you feel sadness, happiness, everything within there. And it's a real tale of a bunch of life and happenstance and circumstance and commonalities. I think that's one of the things that
oh,
really.
that's amazing. I'll have to look that one up.
I'll
That is
actually
fantastic.
I'll see if I can find a cheeky link to it and send you a link. I think that, but again, these are all whenever I ask any of these questions, it's very interesting. I suppose it's a interest in a psychological way as well, to see what people see what people see as the best as well. And
I have a
it
friend on
tells you a lot.
X that he thinks the best movie ever made was Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and oh goodness, what is the other actor? I can't think of his name. He's a great actor.
Does
But
Go on.
to your point, I think it depends on the touchstones in our own minds that those storylines impact with us.
Hmm.
And I know one was Always with Richard Dreyfuss
Oh,
and
what a
John
beautiful
Goodman.
movie. I swear, you'll make me cry just thinking about it, and I will cry over and over every time. Oh,
Yeah, and the scene, not to give too much away, that Richard Dreyfuss is walking with, I think, the great actress Audrey Hepburn through a forest. She says to him, and it's a bit of a George Bailey, It's a Wonderful Life kind of thing, where she says, "Everything that you do for yourself is wasted. Everything you do for yourself is wasted." And I think that's such a commentary on life that if we're the only ones that benefit, then maybe what a waste of time that is, and a testimony about, selfless living. So at the end of our time together, I actually have something, one of my favorite quotes of all time that I will share with the audience that has simply been life-changing, convicting, energizing, and directional for me. And I try to read it often, and I try to share with other people often, hoping that, maybe they'll consider adopting it and change the world, just one breath, one heartbeat, one person at a time.
yeah. That's I tell you, we are going to speak again and again, Doc. I'm sure we're going to speak over and over again in the future. I hope that one day I can travel to America, see some of my favorite people over there, and come to you and get a coffee like I've never tasted before, and get a big hug too. I look forward to having a big
Absolutely.
hug from you. Um, Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for again. I'll say thank you for being part of this past year for me. From start to finish, 2024, you were there for a large part of it, and I really needed people like you in my life in 2024 because 2023 had been so bad. So I thank you for that. Thank you for being part of my life and always being so gracious, being so humble with your time. And I'm just so grateful to know you. So thanks for coming. Can you tell the people where they can find you, where best they can locate you? Because you've got a lot of places and a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think the one I would love to invite people to the most is to my Mindset Masterclass community. It's free of charge, and we talk about big, deep issues. And I really take it seriously, being able to share out something every single day that I think is just bite-sized therapy for the brain that will improve your life. And so that's at school.com/mindset. School is spelled SKOOL.com/mindset. You can find me at Dr. Heath on Substack. You can find me on X at therapy_bites. Any of those, but come join me on School. You can hang out and just watch the posts, the videos, or you can engage and ask questions, and others can learn from you and you can learn from them. But school.com/mindset, school, SKOOL.
Yep, and those links will be down below in whatever platform you're watching this on as well. And it won't be the last time we see each other or speak to each other, my friend. Thank you for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. And I'll just leave your audience with one thing, and this is something that I just try to ingrain in my mind, and is a wonderful, wonderful quote. I think I've read it on Johnny's show before, from the wonderful George Bernard Shaw, who says, "This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the community, that as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed